Hello! Oh my goodness. I was so nervous. I forgot to rename the scene that I had everything ready on. Oh my goodness. Oh yay, look, custom chat works. Okay, so apparently it's just the version of OBS I use. But hello, welcome. We're gonna settle in a bit also cuz I'm kind of nervous. Not gonna lie, I always love talking about books, but admittedly, I very rarely get the chance to, and I'm worried I'm gonna come off as a little too nerdy. Yay! I'm glad that you guys completed the required readings. There will be a 3-page essay assigned at the end of the stream today. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I don't want to grade anything. Although I did used to help out with grading and things like that. It was kind of fun. It wasn't like for, not in university. It was just like when I was younger. I used to really like helping the teachers. Alright, so we have kind of a new setup. I have, if you don't know if you guys saw, I posted on Twitter and Blue Sky. I have a 52-page PowerPoint. I kind of feel like I overdid it, but however, 32 pages of them are just pictures of me illustrating what I consider an unhelpful plot review. That's what I call a tuner. Okay, so technically, I just didn't want to go outside. Like, I don't know why we had to go outside when it was raining, when it was snowing. I preferred being inside. And then I realized I could help the teachers. And then I realized I enjoyed grading. It was a progression, okay? It didn't start off because of... You know what? Whatever. Okay. So, I just want to start off by saying that if anyone does not want to comment in chat, that is totally okay. I do have a pinned comment in the chat for my marshmallow where you can anonymously put in comments, discussions. I will be trying to monitor the marshmallows like in real time. So you feel free to utilize that. I just wanted to give people an option. Means I'm nervous. You mentioned reiterating your stream rules. Yes. Alright, so I realized that because sometimes we have new people coming in, I do want to just focus on some of the stream rules, which is... Hold on, I have to bring up my stream rules. It's been a while since I've taken a look at them. I'm pretty sure I did review them. Okay, yeah. So today we're going to be discussing, I know that sometimes when people get into discussions, we can get heated sometimes, opinions differ, but let's still be kind and respectful in chat. Please do not bring up any other streams. I know that there are other book clubs and other streamers who do book clubs. However, this is my first attempt and I have not watched any other book club streams just to ensure that I can kind of try things out my way. So if you have tried book clubs with other streamers or in other streams, please don't mention them at this time. Let's just see how it goes in the way that I kind of have things planned. Please don't spam messages. I will immediately block. Let's try staying on topic for the stream today. I am okay if you guys discussing in chat, but let's leave personal conversations that don't have anything to do with the stream out of chat today. Also, on that note, please don't reveal any of your personal information. It's not safe. Let's stay safe on the internet. I am very old. We're all going to try to keep to that. And I think the last thing is for spoilers. I do want to have a discussion about that. Today's stream will have spoilers. However, it will have spoilers up until the first volume. So I will try not to spoil anything beyond that. But keep in mind, I am going to be discussing it from the perspective of someone who has finished the story, or at least the first part of the story. A little hint, there currently is a second part of the story ongoing, but I will try my best to be spoiler-free, but there will be spoilers, so if you haven't finished the story, don't worry, I will be doing a plot overview, but there will be spoilers if you have not read up until the first volume or up to chapter 52 of the manhwa. Alright. Hello, welcome, welcome everyone. I'm just reiterating some of the rules that we're going to be going on today. How many books are there? That's a good question because I've noticed that they took the original novel, that was, I believe it was a web novel that was posted online, and they have combined chapters. So when you read the manhwa, it tells you which chapters of the original Korean novel that the manhwa is covering. However, they combine those in this, I guess, this translation, so I'm not sure how many books there are. Right now, there are currently 3 volumes available, and I am not familiar with how much it covers, but this is probably, my guess, gonna be at least seven volumes of this length. So I'm pretty excited. Part of the reason I did want to discuss this book is because it is ongoing. Not only that, but I felt like it'd be really interesting because I know that there was a lot of world building and setting up in this first book. However, I do say there's a lot of action and a lot of things that kind of come full circle in later novels. But we will have a discussion about the book and other kind of feedbacky things later on. It is chunky. It's very long, and I think it's very well done, though. I really this is kind of a spoiler, but kind of not. I do like how the author takes a lot of common tropes, because believe it or not, this was one of the first novels, I believe, that took on this isekai transmigration, and it kind of gave it a different kind of backstory. It's very interesting. I won't say it's not your typical isekai story, but it kind of isn't. I really like it and the world building. I do admit there's quite a bit of... The main character thinks a lot, doesn't he? We can probably discuss that later on, but I do like it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it or at least found it interesting. But yeah, so one of the things I wanted to start off with was a plot overview in case anyone in chat did not cover it. The way that today is going to go is I want to start off with a plot overview. I'll try to keep it brief. And then I have discussion questions for you guys, as well as a kind of interesting thing I've kind of noticed. I want to discuss it with you guys. It's not really a discussion question. It's just something I want to discuss with you guys. And then we're going to do probably discussion questions. And then I want to share with you some of my favorite scenes. I do want you guys to give your feedback whenever you want. You don't have to stay quiet when I'm doing plot overview. But I do hope that this plot overview entertains you. Will there be a Kahoot? I could not do a Kahoot in time. Unfortunately, because I was so excited about doing the plot overview, I didn't get to set up a Kahoot. However, depending on how things go today, I will consider adding it in the future. But yeah, that is how things are gonna go today. I hope you guys are excited. I'm excited. I barely finished the PowerPoint in time today. I think I finished at 9 p.m. So I made it. It's done. It's not perfect. Admittedly, it's not perfect, but I do hope you guys have fun with it. Alright, let's get right into it. Today, we are... Yes, thank you for the reminder. I think I need a drink of water now. I almost knocked over my water when I was working today. It was I was so focused. Very dangerous, chat. Very dangerous. Never put your water next to your mouse. That is what happened to me last time. No worries. Thank you for stopping by anyways, Reiko. I hope you're able to still watch. I do appreciate it, and I hope that you enjoy. Don't worries. Don't forget, if anyone in chat does not want to comment in chat, I do have marshmallows for you. The marshmallow and link in the pinned tweet. In the pinned chat message where you can send them anonymously. Alright, let's get into it. Oops. Alright, so today we're discussing Lout of Accounts Family. Let's do an unhelpful and very long plot overview. I'm just kidding, I'm going to try to keep it brief. So, we have Kim Rok-soo, who wakes up as Lord Kale Henatus. I hope I'm saying his name right. After falling asleep as he read the novel, Birth of a Hero. I did not illustrate it because I could not find it. According to the novel, Kale is a minor villain in the novel who angers and is then beaten to a pulp by the protagonist Choi Han after making terrible remarks about, the late village, which we will get into later on. in the story. Sorry, I said I wouldn't give spoilers. I already gave spoilers. In this novel, Choi Han then goes on to deal with and overcome various challenges and villains alongside his allies to save both the eastern and western continents. Roksu, who is now and will be referred to as Kale, plans to change his fate by leaving a better first impression on Choi Han before living a slacker life uninvolved in the future plot. Let's see how that goes. The first thing he does is utilize his knowledge of the world so he can plan to earn various ancient powers that will help to protect him from future wars and events. Kale has a much better first encounter with an injured Choi Han and brings him back to the Hennetu's estate where he introduces him to his future allies. Ron, which is Kale's personal butler / former head of an assassin family, and Vikros, Ron's son and a chef / torture expert, because you know those things go hand in hand. Now, Kale believes that they will connect as they did in the novel, however. I forgot to include, it's supposed to have a subtitle that says strong and dangerous person. But anyways, I just thought it's gonna be silly. So he first collects the unbreakable shield, passing the test for power with numerous bags of bread, and ends up adopting 2 small kittens. One with silver fur and the other red, that bear striking resemblance with 2 children he often encountered. Turns out these kids are cat beastmen from the Mist Cat tribe. Exactly. Why else accumulate power? During the process of attaining the shield, I do have notes, by the way. Kale is tasked by his father to represent them, Count, at an event hosted by the royal family. Now, I don't know if you guys can see it very clearly. I tried to find an image of the, hierarchy, because there will be a lot of titles later on. So right now you can see the Count is kind of in the middle, and Kale is just the representative. Technically, he's a lord, so he's like closer to the bottom. I don't know if you can see it. It's like the crown that is the second from the bottom. But when he represents his dad is actually the Count. There will be other nobles mentioned. I'll bring up the image again if we need it. But I just wanted to give you kind of a visual. Now, although reluctant, he only agrees so that he could deal with some future catastrophes, including a terrorist attack at the royal event, and claim another ancient power along the way. After sharing a final breakfast with his family before he leaves, and by the way, most of the plot overview is me wanting to give you guys a visual of the characters. Kale, Choi Han, Hong, On, Ron, Vikros, and Vice Captain Hillsman, Hans, and other guards sent by the Countess who are not seen because I couldn't fit them on screen, head towards the capital in their carriage that is facing the wrong direction, don't mind. The group first stops in a neighboring Viscount's territory. Now, a Viscount is below the Count, where they have their first encounter with Benny and Stan, who is the second son of a Marquise who is above the Count, whom Kale plans to free the dragon that is currently being tortured under the guise of taming it. Now, look at how terrible these 2 people are and what they're doing to a baby dragon. After Kale uses his wits to avoid unnecessary potential noble society issues in their encounter, his party heads to an inn where he has them all drink the night away. Now, while this is happening, Kale, Choi Han, and the kittens head to the baby dragon's prison and manage to free it, using tools loaned from Bilos. Bilos, I don't know how to say his name. After ensuring the baby dragon is properly healed, Kale has everyone head back, believing the dragon will now head off to live on its own. You can't say that, you just haven't... Okay, you can only say that because you haven't met this baby dragon yet, which is a Phineas and Ferb reference, but my point stands. Although his entourage is mildly suspected of the incident, they manage to leave unscathed, and the group, plus a devoted and invisible food gatherer, continues towards Perthel, the city of stone towers and the location of the next ancient power, the energy of the heart. Now, Kale takes Choi Han and 2 unexpected followers to the location of the trial for the energy of the heart, which he passes using the unbreakable shield and strengthens it with his new power. I didn't know I broke it up so much, my goodness. After adopting the baby dragon, Kale tasked the kittens to secretly deliver a letter to Taylor Stan, Benion's better in every way older brother, and his best friend, priestess of the death god Cage, detailing exactly what they're looking for: hope. And the Crown Prince Alberu Crossman's ancient power, the Star of Healing. So many ancient powers. Now, their business in Pertho complete, the group splits off. Choihan sets off to collect Rosalind and Lark, while Kale and the rest of their group, now including an adorable baby dragon, continue towards the capital. They encounter Taylor Sten's group along the way, albeit reluctantly on Kale's part. Together, they continue towards the capital. Now, as they got closer, Kale helps Taylor and Cage with both funds and a plan to enter the capital, with the benefit of his prior knowledge and strategic thinking. Wow, I was wordy when I wrote this. After successfully smuggling the two past the front gate of the city Whis, he sends them off and plans to relax before he has to deal with the upcoming incident. I should also note that there are some parts that I was not able to figure out how to illustrate. I didn't know how to illustrate Kale managing to get two whole people past the gate and the guards. But only for Kale to find Choihan at the door with Rosalind and Lark dealing with his first berserk mode a year earlier than the novel. After Kale informs them of Lark's situation and how to deal with this, it takes Choihan and Rosalind hours, but Lark is eventually successful in overcoming his first transformation during the period, which Kale uses as a teaching moment for all three kids. Now, I mentioned it, but I didn't illustrate it. I should have reviewed this. Kale figures out that some things have changed from the novel, and now there are 10 more Blue Wolf Tribe children to take care of. Yes, okay. Now, Kale takes Choihan to the Temple of Death to make a vow of truth in order to maintain his trust in Kale, because, you should always trust someone who somehow knows what is going on, sends you there to intercept it in time, and allows you to... Well, I don't know how to express it, but I do feel like it's very suspicious, and so, making a pinky promise is probably the least he can do. Exactly. Now that trust has been established, Kale informs Choihan and the baby dragon about the magic bombs that will attack the event and tasks the two of them to find their locations, including the ones distributed to unknowing citizens. At the royal event, Kale is saved by Eric, Amir, and Gilbert from an annoying fly and manages to shake off Benion's suspicion of his involvement in the theft once more. I did not illustrate Benion because I felt like having his face in my PowerPoint once was enough. Exactly, pinky promises are like the most serious of all promises. Now, Kale, along with his group, greet the Crown Prince Alberu and unknowingly learn some of his secrets thanks to a very curious and chatty baby dragon. Now, don't you hate when your secrets are exposed by a dragon who can literally, figure out everything? Gosh. Now, from here, I don't have as many visuals, so I'll keep reading. Choihan reports to Kale that they were only able to find 4 magic bombs and is joined by the 2 kittens to monitor the locations. Choihan, Rosalind, Lark, An, Hong, and the baby dragon all head off to dismantle the 4 bombs around the plaza. At the palace, the baby dragon reports that everything is proceeding as scheduled, and Kale is greeted by a now completely healed and standing on his own 2 feet Taylor Sten. Now, Taylor was in a wheelchair. I forgot to illustrate it. But now he stands on his own 2 feet. Hooray! As Kale, Amir, Taylor, and Annoying Fly share a carriage to the plaza, the novel ends. That was way shorter than I thought it'd be. But yay! 34 slides! You're right. Make a contract, but a pinky promise, not even the most evil villains. That's very true. I feel like breaking a pinky promise is something only true evil villains do. Oops. Hold on. I refreshed my marshmallow and it gave me a cat. How weird, but interesting. All right. I keep wanting to use Wows. I keep wanting to use my arrow keys, but it is not the arrow keys. Oh, sorry, that was for something else. That is the plot overview. I did skip quite a bit, and as you can tell, it kind of got chunky at the end because there were some things I wanted to include in the plot overview simply because I knew they were important, or there were characters I liked, so I mentioned them. However, I think with that summary, you do have a pretty good idea of who the characters are, what they look like, and where the novel ended. Especially where the novel ended. Alright, so first off, I did get the slides a bit mixed up. The next one I had was not the first one I wanted to use, so we are going to start off with it only because I accidentally ordered it wrong. But wait, let me see if I can fix that. Hold on. Can I adjust the order? I cannot. It will take me... Wait, what number is this? 34. Okay, so what if I move... No! Okay, oops. We're gonna have to... So, let's start off with what were your guys' thoughts... Hold on, actually... Hold on, we're gonna knock on wood. I worked very hard on this. As you can tell, I liked it. I had fun making this. I feel like if I had more time, I could make it even sillier and include more memes. But I think the point came across. Alright, so this is a little early, but one of the things I wanted to discuss is the Roof Hennetus, the dad of Kale Hennetus, is a millennial that is permissive parenting, pretty much neglectful, almost there. Now, I will be flexible on the fact that he's a millennial. However, I think the permissive parenting is something that is undeniable. Yes. Now, let me bring up why I think he's neglectful. Because let's be real, the very first thing that happens is like knowing Kale's quote unquote personality, the fact that he has never had boundaries set for him, never had his dad talk to him, because there have always been like characters who are like kind of not great. They will, well, Kale, sorry, hold on. This is what happens when you drink too much water. You burp. Excuse me. Yeah. The thing is, Kale's personality, the original Kale, not Kim Rok-soo, who is now Kale, the original OG Kale, he was known to constantly be drinking, throw bottles at gangsters, not really talk to his family, and not say great things. He had a mouth on him. However, his dad literally never reached out and talked to him. All it said was Kale would listen to his dad. That means if his dad had actually told him not to do these things, he would have stopped. But the fact that he continued doing this, although we haven't gone into his motives yet, he doesn't say anything. I can understand that, like, being a noble, there are other things to consider when it comes to, like, raising your kids, making sure they have, like, their education and everything. However, one of the things they mentioned is that Kale literally hasn't studied in 10 years. He is the firstborn of the count. The roof is not a duke. Yes, exactly. He's only 18. He is a kid. And he didn't do anything. And like even the first time they had the meal together, as soon as Kale sat down, he seemed like he was ready for Kale to like complain about how like the food was disgusting. But as soon as Kale was like having a good time, he was in a good mood. He was literally just like, oh, there's no conflict today. Oh, he's behaving better today. But he never does anything to correct it. Like the first thing they mention is that the roof is the only person Kale listens to. If he had told Kale, don't drink, that's not good for you, Kale, what's going on? Kale, let's study for your future. I'm sure Kale would have done it. That is like the whole thing. But he is literally neglectful because, hold on, the reason I want to bring up permissive parenting is because he's basically just overindulging Kale to avoid conflict. He's like, oh, I'm a good parent. I let him do what he wants. I don't need to deal. I don't restrict him, and I'm sure he'll eventually come around. That's the thing. Like, he has a wife, or his new wife has a son, and also he has a daughter with the new wife. Like, he clearly, I don't know if you guys saw on the PowerPoint slide, but they all have the same colored hair. Kale is literally the odd one out. Now, as someone with future novel knowledge, I do have more depth towards this. But honestly, Daruf is such a terrible parent. I did not like him at all. Like, even later on, you can understand his motives, but the way he's treating Kale is like completely unacceptable for someone who claims he loves his son. That's the kind of like how it seems, right? That's how his behavior is towards Kale. That's why I gave him a poor. You know, like those stamps where it's like, great job, awesome. I gave him poor. I would have given him no stamp, but I figured like you have to give feedback in order for someone to know. It's so complex, isn't it? Because not only is he a parent, he's a noble trying to parent. And there's so much going on. Like, clearly he's a good leader because his territory is successful. They are wealthy. They have so much going on. But the fact that his child's only 18, and let me also bring up the point, one of the things the book mentions multiple times is that Kale's behavior is not actually that bad. Number one, when there was a servant who went to wake up Kale, what happened was Kale just yelled at the servant, and then the servant went around telling everyone it was like he was, quote unquote, hit by a flurry of punches, verbal punches, and it made people think that Kale was violent. Number two, literally there are rumors of not only his son being like a lout, which is actually trash and a slacker. However, what is he doing not correcting these rumors? Why is he not stopping it? Why is he not dealing with people who are disrespecting his son in his own home? His son is literally living in a hostile environment. I get that there are only certain things you can control. However, I just don't understand why the rumors have gone so out of hand, even though it's not even the truth. Like, it's kind of like, I know that it's not a society where you can record someone's behavior and be like, look, he didn't do that. It's not true. I have evidence. However, for this kind of level of account, to have employees who are gossiping about their employers and then he's basically not dealing with them, it's like letting them know that, yeah, I don't really care about my son. On all levels, it's pretty much like he's neglectful. He does not care that his son is 18 and has a terrible reputation, does not care that his son is destroying himself, self-destructing his own future. I have no idea what is going on through his mind at this point. Actually, I do. But I don't know how he could possibly twist it in his mind that he loves his son, unless he thinks that because he hasn't kicked out his son yet, that is his love for his son. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. There are so many terrible parents in this novel. I think I'm gonna have to make a tier list about the terrible parental figures in this novel. It's going to be crazy. Alright, that is my kind of rant about this. I really wanted to discuss it because I was so annoyed. So annoyed. I don't even blame the stepmom. The thing is, I don't want to just... I feel like I could have also brought up violin. Because on one hand, if we're going to play the other hand, because I can't just complain. Daruf as a count has a lot of responsibilities. He has a huge territory, a lot of success. He has things to consider, reputational. He has to consider how his son may affect his interpersonal relationships. All those things are valid. However, first and foremost, that is your child. That is your firstborn. He's supposed to be the heir. That is why I think I'm so incensed about it, or so it bothers me. It's why I wanted to bring it up. Because even with his wife, Violin, who is the stepmother, it's said that from Kale's perspective, she doesn't like him and avoids him. That's the thing too, agreed. It's probably a thing of just being satisfied, having the son around, looking healthy, giving the satisfaction. He's alive and healthy, so I'm doing a good job. Exactly. However, I think Kale is surviving in spite of Daruf, not because of him, and he doesn't see that. But that's probably exactly how he's justifying it. With how passive he is, makes me wonder how he rules. That's another thing. One of the things I think we can bring up is Neil, Viscount. So Benny and Stan has someone under him called Neil, and the reason I had his image up is that he is literally under Kale in terms of status. However, because he's following someone who is above Kale, but also because of the fact that the Count is letting people criticize his son, even though, yes, his second son apparently has a slightly better reputation. However, because this is his firstborn and is supposed to be his heir, I think it does make people judge how he rules. Like, his territory is successful. It's said he has so many hidden experts. They are wealthy. They have great exports. However, would you trust a ruler who seems nice? And by nice, I mean his territory seems to be running well. However, the rumors about his family will definitely affect people's perception of him, whether they respect him, whether they want to do business with him, whether they, what kind of value they put in his territory. This is something that will feed into other things. So no matter how he tries to turn it, I think it's a very important thing that, how do I say this? It's not as small as, oh yeah, he doesn't really care for his son. Nope. This is noble society. They will take any little thing and apply to everything because they need to, because it's competitive, because they are trying to accumulate power. Kids are just decorations, something to look at every couple days and feel satisfied. Isn't that just the unfortunate reality? Because I don't want to get too heavily into parenting, but I will say that perceiving this honestly makes me feel so bad for the OG Kale. So bad. Yeah, so Kale's mom. So Kale's original mom, the one who gave birth to him and the Duke's first wife, is not discussed in this first novel. Her backstory does come in a little bit later, so I will hold off on it. But what we can say is that apparently Kale's stepmom does care about him, but she does not know how to approach him. I would like to argue that she's in a different space as Daruf because Daruf is literally the father, the sperm donor, the direct parent of Kale. However, Violin Henatus, which is the Duke's second wife, she's kind of in an awkward place. She knows that she married Daruf. I can't give spoilers. She married Daruf and she kind of does care about Kale. She has how do I say this? I have to try to say this without spoilers. The only thing I can say is, as we can tell, when she was trying to manage how Kale entered the capital, made sure he had enough guards, made sure he had good quality things. On one hand, you can argue she did that because of the face value of the reputation of the count of the county. However, I would like to argue that she did do it kind of in, even when the roof was gonna pull back. Like, Kale's like, oh, I don't want a huge group. And the roof was like, okay. And then Violin's like, no, let's give him a bit more. We don't have a lot on the roof or Violin, but I will say that a lot of this already reflects so poorly on the roof. So much more. Violin we can discuss. The roof, terrible parent. I don't know how he is with Bassin or Lily. I don't really care. Because if you are a terrible parent to one child and just a good parent to the other two, you are still a bad parent. You're just showing favoritism. And I feel so bad for OG Kale for having to deal with this. Exactly, especially because the roof is, you're like you said, openly disregarding and uncaring of him. she would definitely find it hard to like speak up. And he does, I think, what was the quote he had when he was talking about her? She's someone who really prioritizes art, and she's really helped the county thrive, which you could argue is in her own best interest as well. What was the others? I think it was just that she found him awkward. Let's see. I want to get the direct quote because I don't want to miss. Let's see. This one is that one. I can't find it right now. I should have written it down. But I think he just says that she avoids him and finds it awkward, but she doesn't actually do anything to him. And we can tell that Kale doesn't have a bad relationship with his two siblings either. It's just kind of awkward, but it's not terrible because if it was, he would have mentioned it, I think, offhandedly. How do you act in that situation? Do you do as your husband, risking the kid, or do you help the kid, risking your relationship with your husband? Yes, that's also the thing. I think at this point in time in the novel, the only thing I can say without spoilers is we do not get a lot of insight to Violin's perspective, aside from the fact that she does seem to care about the county, she is aware of Kale, and it does not seem like she is hostile or doing anything against Kale at this point in time. That's what I can say. It's also so difficult, I think, especially for his siblings. Think about it. So you have Bassin, who is Violin's son. How does he treat this older brother who seems to be very out of control? And you see that both your parents aren't doing anything and you don't really know how to approach it either. And then you have Lily, who is even younger. Lily, I think, is said to be 9. I think she's older than 9, but she's so young. She also does seem very awkward with her older brother, but she still has hope. I think that's why she spoke up when Kale was leaving on his trip. And did she end up asking him for a souvenir, I believe? So you can tell that she doesn't think too poorly of her older brother. Otherwise, I don't think she would ask for a souvenir. She thinks she'd be like much more scared. Sword, right? Yes. So she does ask. And I think Bassin also is able to voice a gift. So clearly his relationship with his siblings is not hostile. I think it's said at one point that he literally has never been violent towards his family. Never, never, never. Not inside, not outside. Yes, a pen and a sword. Noble son is not even receiving an education. I don't care about this kid. Just let him. Yeah. I think Daruf, a lot of his mindset, because with how happy he was at dinner or breakfast, how happy he was at breakfast to see Kale, you can kind of tell that he does not despise his son at this time. That's what I'll say. However, he probably is not aware of how terrible, terrible, terrible his actions come across. It's one thing to say, hey, it's my kid. If I don't mind, it shouldn't matter. It's another thing to know that your son will have to live in this society, understand the expectations of the society, understand how this will reflect back onto you and your family and your future dealings. Oh my goodness, it's so messy. It's so terrible. Daruf is honestly, as we keep talking about it, I feel like he's a permissive parent who is parenting so it's just neglectful. It's pretty much on the borderline cusp of permissive versus neglectful. The reason I brought up permissive parenting is it's such a topic now about parents who are not parenting kids. They're just letting the kids go and then they don't seem to care about the kids' future. And I couldn't help but feel like that was Daruf. Like I wrote in my notes, oh my gosh, Daruf is a permissive parent. And then I put millennial just because it was a thing, but he's not a millennial. I don't know the generations of this fantasy land, but yeah, it's not great, isn't it? I don't. I did want to As someone who has read more of the story, I really want to give him the benefit of the doubt. However, because this novel, how do I say this? Because this is from Kim Rok-soo or Kale's perspective, and because the comments he's making are objective, I think one of the first things he says when he comments, don't forget to slanderize Kale. I imagined if he did take mom's death so well, but he does get praise from dad when he does a good job. Yeah. I imagine. That's the thing. Yes, agreed. He didn't take mom's death so well. I don't think he would have. You can tell. You can tell that. You can't tell. You can definitely tell that Kale struggles since his mom isn't here. I can't imagine. We can tell that he lost his mom very young, especially with how isolated he seems right now in his home. Literally, no one's on his side. That hits a bit too close to home. Oh, old Kale just did not do a decent job of trying. I think old Kale, OG Kale, was too young to know what to do in that situation. He was obviously too young. We can argue he's 18 now. I can't imagine what age he was when his mom died. Lily, like I said, I think is 9. So let's say that he was like 9 when his mom died. What do you do at that age? You have no idea. Your parental figure went off, remarried, had another kid. You are still struggling to figure out your place. What do you do? And I think that is exactly why he spiraled. I don't think it was like intentionally destructive. It kind of. I think he was a kid who did not know what to do, had no one to turn to, and therefore no one to tell him or correct him or advise him, and he ended up just getting spiraling because he didn't know he could stop. He didn't have someone who tried to help him to stop, and he had no one he could really talk to about why he was doing all these things. The poor guy. The poor guy. What was the first thing that Kale, Rok-soo said when he came in is that if the Duke cared about Kale, he would have brought up his behavior or corrected him, but because Rok-soo is not Kale, he doesn't care that Duruf does not care. Isn't that like the terrible thing for someone who's objectively only been in your family for like a day and has already been like, oh yeah, this matches up with the novel I read. It's not even like, hey, my actions are taken out of context because it's from someone else's perspective. It's literally, oh yeah, you're just a dad. You just don't care. Oh my god. But would he know? You're not wrong. He did still have his dad, and he could have pushed for help. I'm trying to. There is more backstory, I will say. As someone who has finished this story, or at least the part 1 of this, the first part of the story, and by part 1, I mean the first major conflict has finished. I feel like as a kid, why didn't Kale know that he could voice it out to his dad? I kind of want to bring up that topic instead of spoiling anything. I definitely agree with you. Rok-soo definitely got so much support because he showed improvement, because they don't know it's not Kale, right? They think that Kale has kind of come to his senses, that he is doing better, that he is changed now. And isn't that so sad that the reason I wanted to bring up why didn't Kale know how to reach out to his dad is I think as kids, you know how they say like quiet kids are kids who don't know how to speak up when they want something? That's not always the case, but I do think that it is also telling that Kale as a young child did not know to complain to his dad or talk to his dad or reach out to his dad. There is a bit of spoilers to deal with this situation, but I will say that it still doesn't make the roof any better. The spoilers do not really improve on his end. Lots of parents would never acknowledge that they are doing something wrong, so the mere idea of them being neglectful. I do think he's also in denial about his neglect. I really do. As a child, dad was probably too busy, not to mention we don't know how quickly the step gets into the scene. Yes, that is not discussed, so you're right. We still don't have a lot of background on their kind of relationship and a bit more detail on like the timeline and the history. So that's why we can only talk about what we have already seen, but it doesn't look good. They would just laugh or shout about it, assuming the kid's just being a dumb kid. They always search for an excuse or reason why they aren't at fault. Yes, I think there will always be people who do that, and it's very, very hurtful to the kid because, well, I guess it'd be hurtful for anyone, but I think especially for kids. I remember, oh gosh, okay, so I'm not gonna go too in depth in this, but I distinctly remember moments where I tried to reach out to someone, an adult or a friend, and then they just laughed at me and they called me dumb. And I never forgot that and I never went to them again. I'm very lucky to have a parent in my life who really cares and really listens. And I cannot imagine not having a single adult figure you can turn to. I think that must be so, so difficult on Kale's part. You can tell. Because I think if we look at Ron, and one of the things with Ron is Kale's personal butler. I think it's said in the novel that Ron has been with Kale pretty much his entire life. He served him almost his entire life. He's known him almost his entire life. And then Ron just gets up and leaves. Ron would have just gotten up and left Kale, someone he spent his life with. And you can argue he's a butler. However, I think for Kale, if original Kale had been here and if he had seen Ron leave, which is literally like the only adult figure who was by his side, I feel like that would have been so, so terrible. He would have felt even more isolated. He would have felt truly alone because you can tell that his dad is not on his side. No one's really on his side. It's just so sad. So, so sad for OG Kale. Mans, okay. I think that we're gonna have to pause the discussion here because we don't really have much more to go off of. But we will, if we continue reading the story, I think we should bring it up again if we get more background and if we decide to continue. So let's move to the next slide. That was a good discussion though. I really enjoyed talking to you guys about that. I'm glad you guys got as into it as I did. So I want to hear from you guys. Who was your favorite character in this story so far? This is how a supervillain is born. Kale is going to turn into something, wanting to... Oh gosh. You know what? That is a totally other alternative universe where Kale becomes the true villain of the novel. He probably would have gotten revenge on Choi Han. I'm just kidding. So your favorite was... When you say the goddess, are you talking about the unbreakable shield? The one who was eating bread? Or which one are you talking about? The goddess. Oh, is it Cage? Are you... Kale is now in Kim's body wreaking havoc. Oh my gosh, it's a double transmigration. Yes and no. Okay, so you're talking about the unbreakable shield, the ancient power. I see. She's definitely an interesting character, isn't she? I do think it's interesting that she is your favorite character. Do you mind saying a bit more about why she's your favorite character? I will definitely share my favorite character with you guys as well. I just would love to hear from you guys. I mean, I also think Cage could count, but... If you don't want to, that's also okay. But let me just tell you what my favorite character is and why. My favorite character, personally, I love a lot of the characters, is On, the Silver Fox. She is so cute, so bright, so clever, and I love her reactions when everyone is like going through things. She seems like she's always the first to notice things, and then she's also the first to like judge Kale when He doesn't realize he's being dense. Hyperfixation on bread. How long has she been trapped there? Then goes like, very fair. She definitely left an impact, didn't she? She had this whole. I think she could have been she would have been like a very prominent reviewer, don't you think? I think she was super excited about the last batch of bread, so she definitely could differentiate a different taste as well. A bread recipe, definitely. You don't have a favorite character for now. The new Kale doesn't show much of himself or his personality, though it could be a thing of the comic rather than the novel. I do agree with that, Reiko. So one of the things is with the reason I recommended the novel over the manhwa is that in the manhwa, a common comment among novel fans or people who read the novel before we read the manhwa is that you don't really get a lot of Kale's personality because a lot of Kale's character and a lot of his personality is really hidden in his thoughts because he's someone who thinks more. Of course, you can tell how he is from his actions because he's very action oriented, but a lot of Kale's character and his traits and these things all come out in his thoughts, which is why the novel is such a great way to see and get to know him. But I do understand, like, the manhwa is very pretty. I love the manhwa. However, I do think you do kind of miss out on a bit of his very fun thought processes. But you know what? Fair enough. You don't have a favorite character for now. There is a huge cast of characters in the story, and I'm sure that eventually you'll find one. Hello! Don't worry about being late. We went through a brief plot overview. We had a very intense parenting discussion, and now we're just getting into some discussion questions, so don't worry. Welcome! Let me take a sip of water. Remember to hydrate as well, you guys. Alright. I kind of like wanted you guys to try to describe your favorite character in 3 words. However, I think that if you don't have a favorite character, you can describe a character who you had like a really strong first impression of in 3 words. The reason I kind of want to do it is just to see how would you try to narrow down your favorite character. For me, I think An is, like I said, clever. She is sassy, but she is also perceptive. An is always the one, like, noticing things. Hungry tree power. If we were, like, playing one of those games where it's like, guess who? Or, like, what is it? The game where you have a word on your head and you have to, like, try to guess based on someone else's description, I think it'd be very clear who you're referring to. I do recommend it, Reiko. However, I do say that the manhwa follows the plot of the novel pretty well, so you don't miss out on a lot of the plot. It really is just like the characterization and kind of like different perspectives, because sometimes the novel does give you different character perspectives, so you kind of get to see the thoughts of other characters as well. But if you really like getting to know, like, how do I say this? Both are very good. I just personally recommend. Both are perfectly fine for plot. Alright, next slide. These are pretty short. I didn't try to put in too many. Kale Hennetu's clever, laid-back, strategic. That's a really good description of him, Marvin. I definitely agree. That's how he comes across, isn't he? He's very strategic. He seems to always be planning ahead, and he seems to pick things up so well. One of the things is Roxu really adapted to Kale super quickly. Those perspectives are extremely important. Exactly. That's why I like the novel for these points. That is why it's so long, though. I will say the novel is so long because you do get so many details, but it makes it so much more interesting. If I had to point at one, probably Ron, old man that enjoys poking at the kid and scaring him, acting innocent all the time. Yeah. Ron is fun. A lot of the characters have really vibrant personalities. And by vibrant, I mean they're pretty distinctive. There's not a lot of, not a lot, but I do think that each of the characters, you don't really mistaken one for the other when it comes to like the reoccurring main cast. They're really fun. If I had to describe Ron in 3 words, it would be, well, it's kind of strange, but playful, serious, and also, I guess, dangerous. It's kind of how I can describe him without too many spoilers. But it's really fun, I think. Oh, shoot, did I already go to the next scene? Oh no! Okay, I did. Whoops, I didn't know I had gone to the next one. I didn't go to the next slide. So, what scene stood out the most to you guys? Was there a scene that stood out the most to you guys? Why? While you guys are like planning your answers, let me share one of my favorite scenes. My absolute favorite scene in this volume is when scene would be Lark Berserk. Oh, you guys are fast. I was gonna give you guys time to type. Solid proof that OG story is officially changed. Also, Care's aura farming while they trying to survive Lark's onslaught. Ah, that is so true. So true. Noting when Kale or Roxu Kale, says that Lark's change, Berserk transformation, occurred a whole year before the novel. That is crazy. Instantly tells us that Kale, even though he has not done much, something is changing in a novel. Things are not turning out. How do I say this? We're not following the plot. The plot has gone off the rails. And isn't that great? Because oftentimes one of my critiques when it comes to these stories is how can the plot follow so closely? I feel like as long as someone has a different personality, something will change. Even when Kale is trying to act not done much, okay. That's what from his perspective, right? From Kale's perspective, he really hasn't done much. He's adopted 2 kids who weren't mentioned in the novel, so he doesn't think it affects anything. He just avoided Choi-han beating him up. Like, from his perspective, he hasn't done much. It's not that he hasn't really done much, but oftentimes, isn't that what happens in novels where they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't done much, and then they're like, oh, but the plot's still progressing. How? I don't really get that. So I like that you almost immediately get to see that, oh yeah, he cannot follow or use the novel as like a guide step by step to deal with, to know or anticipate what's gonna happen. The Kale aura farming while they try to survive Lark's onslaught is also very funny to me though. It's also another of my favorite moments. But Kale using the indestructible shield for the first time. Oh. Marvin, you kind of gone a little bit ahead because in the first volume, we don't get to see his indestructible shield just yet. Maybe it's a bit further in the manhwa. I don't know if it is, but very true. That is a defining moment. I would love to discuss that more. However, because it hasn't occurred in the volume, I think we'll save that for the next discussion. But very valid. Very, very valid. Old Kale and to Ron. For what you've read, the moment when Ron remembers how Kale was the one that consoled his father when the mom died and accepted the family. Okay, so I did not remember if this occurred in this volume or if it was a spoiler in my head. Could refer to his test when first got the shield. Oh, that's true as well. So if you're referring to the first time Kale tested his unbreakable shield, that is my fault, Marvin. You didn't spoil it, I did. But yes, that is also very true. I think, what does Kale say? He says that it seems too divine, right? He says the shield is too divine, and that kind of gives us a hint. It's like, is this foreshadowing? Is this foreshadowing that Kale is taking actions that are so contrary? Because he still thinks he's acting like trash or a lout, but he's getting a divine shield. Agreed that it is the very anti what he's going for. Exactly, also aesthetic of the shield itself. Yes, but I do think the aesthetic is reflecting something because a shiny silver shield, does that not sound so much like the knights who are doing everything they can to protect? He says that it's for selfish purposes, he plans to use it for himself, but Does that hint to something else that potentially? Agreed. Top 10 moment. Okay, so about the Ron moment, because I did go off because I wanted to make sure that I corrected myself. Anti-Lark shield. It's not true. Lark is a beastman. He's only afraid of holy things, not the divine, which we could argue is the same thing, but it does not say that he cannot protect other people, including Lark, using the shield. So I do think when Ron notes that Kale was the one who consoled his father, that is an important moment because I wanted to bring it up in the previous discussion when we were talking about terrible parents. I understand that even as adults, you can grieve and struggle with loss. But for your young son to be the one to have to try to help you instead of you supporting your young son, I think that speaks a lot to Kale not being able to rely on his dad and his dad not being aware or caring about Kale. Does that make sense? Kind of like, how do I say this? Everyone grieves. It's not that his dad cannot grieve, but for Ron to remember Kale consoling his dad, I think that must have been so impactful for adults to see a young boy doing that and then seeing what he grows up to be. I don't know, there's definitely something there. I kind of lost my train of thought, but without going too much into it, is that not so sad? So sad for OG Kale and for saying to his character that he is willing to step up and willing to do things and he's willing to put aside himself in order to take care of the people he cares about. It's so contrary to the rumors that are spreading about him, isn't it? Crazy. I'm still mad at the roof. But let me share my favorite moment as well. My favorite moment, because I think I started and I didn't continue it, but my favorite moment was when the dragon was rescued by Kale. The reason it was so impactful for me is because as soon as Kale rescued and released the dragon, from the collar that was restricting its magic, the first thing he says is, "You are a dragon and you are great and mighty." And he basically affirms to a child, refers to this young, poor dragon who was hurt and locked away and for so long, and tells him, "You are great, you are amazing, this is who you are." And then he asks him, "What do you want to do?" The child, and I think the quote is, for the first time, he finally voiced what he had been thinking for 4 years. "I will live. I will escape. I will be free." Crazy. So important for Rook-Soo to have seen this child, not only saved it, but to give it a goal, give it motivation, remind it to live, I think it would have been so easy for that dragon to have been consumed by hate and revenge. And of course, he still wants revenge. Valid. Totally valid. But to remember that there is more to it than just revenge, to remember I have other things to live for, I have other things I want to aim for. I think that is so important and so amazing of Rook-Soo to have done that, because so many people wouldn't think of that, right? So many people would have just rescued it and been like, "You're free, go off now," or "I did a good thing." But instead, Rook-Soo is trying to set the child up to be able to, how do I say this, have something beyond the revenge, if that makes sense. Instead of just focusing on revenge, it's almost like he's reminding him, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And the child's first thought is that it wants to be free. It's not even revenge. It's his first thought. He wants to be free. Oh my goodness. It's so crazy, so amazing how Rook-Soo handled it, the way they wrote it. I was not a fan of how they styled it in the novel, though. One of the things is, how do I say this? Do you guys know, or how do you guys perceive style in a book? Because when it comes to books, one of the things that says style to me is the formatting. So sometimes authors will deliberately break things apart or like utilize spacing, utilize paragraph spaces, quotes, italics, and things like that. All that goes into style, right? The original author, when they wrote, I will be free, I will escape, they separated each one so it had its own line, and it was a paragraph space, like a space in between each line, so that you could focus on those 3 words in each line. And that made it so much more impactful to me. So when I read the novel, and this is a mild complaint, they kind of just smushed it all together, and I was like, oh, the impact is gone. The impact, the saying the statement, knowing that the child had to think and pause as it like said these things, it would have been so much better, I think, if they had followed the original novel styling. But that was the scene that like stood out the most to me. Still absolutely one of my favorites, and it's still one of the scenes that I constantly think of when I think of this novel. And I think it's also crazy that in that scene, Roksu mentions that he's also using it as a teaching moment for Choi Han. He's literally like using one thing and knocking off like multiple things of it. He's like, instead of hitting 2 birds of a stone, he's hitting 4 birds of a stone. It's crazy how strategic, how much he plans, how much he considers, how like considerate his personality is. Where would you say would be the best place to read a novel? I think there is nothing wrong with the version that has been licensed and adapted by 7 Seas. Yes, I, at this time, cannot recommend others because I do not want to get anyone in trouble. If you find other translations, you can definitely consider it as long as it is not a machine translated, meaning immediate Google translated. Because I don't want to bring trouble to anyone who might be translating it, I will say there is nothing wrong with the 7 Seas translation. I have very minor complaints, that being one of them. The other minor complaint I have is using, what was it? I think they said, I threw an arm and a leg on you. I was... In the original novel, all they said is, I spent a lot of money on you. So for them to translate, I spent a lot of money as you, to I threw an arm and a leg on you is crazy to me. You didn't need to use the saying. Is it the colloquialism? What is it? The analogy? I think I'm getting it wrong. Colloquial meaning. Yeah, like you didn't need to use those kinds of sayings because I think it kind of takes away from the writing because it wasn't used in the original. But other than that, nothing wrong with 7 Seas. And if you can, I do recommend looking for it at your local library. They should have a digital and a physical copy, whichever one works better for you. Okay, next question. What, if anything, set this book apart from others you've read in a similar genre? If you guys have read a similar genre. I think I mentioned earlier, like for me, I really like how the author took a lot of very typical tropes. Isekai took someone being transported to a novel, and they're kind of turning it on their head. There's so many spoilers I can't get into, but I really like how they took one thing that was very typical, expanded on it, and then reconnected it back. There are so many things that will round back later that, for example, there are very few red herrings in this book. I will not tell you which ones, but if you see something, you're like, that's kind of weird. It's probably not a red herring. And this is a novel that came out way before isekai or transmigration got too crazy popular, I would say. It's a novel that kickstarted me wanting to read more about people being transported into novels. Was I disappointed? A little bit by some of the other novels, but I think that's why this one is still so memorable to me, and I'm so excited it's been licensed. I am definitely gonna buy every book. I will definitely support the author. I want to see more of this kind of story being licensed here. But is there anything for you guys that has set this book apart from other stories where, like, oh, I woke up and found myself in a novel I read? And if there aren't, that's okay too. I was just curious if you guys have read other stories like this and if you've seen any differences. Or if you've seen anything that has kind of like set this apart. However, you didn't read, forgive me. It's fine, it's fine. I do know that, like, this is, for as saturated as this genre is, it is not super mainstream. Like, the genre itself is so saturated in its niche. But there's so many other stories and things, totally valid if this is the first time you've read it. And I do appreciate that you are giving it a shot. And you my goodness, my voice is already shot. Hold on. But you know what? If I can introduce you guys to something that you may not have tried before, but you are willing to try this time, totally fine as well. I think we're going to move on to the next question. Totally fine. What 3 words would you use to summarize this book? And I think this is going to be a little more difficult, so if you need like phrases, that's totally fine as well. Things that separate from others would be start on future books, since it is still fairly generic for now, I guess in the I did it first way. That is also valid. That is also very valid, because there is enough. I have been refreshing the marshmallows. Thank you for the reminder. So far, no one has really submitted any marshmallows. Totally fine. I just wanted to give you guys another option in case anyone wanted another one. But yes, I am refreshing them. But yes, that is also very valid. Like I said, the action for this starts in volume 2. And by action, I mean now that they've kind of set up the world, they've given you a bunch of kind of like moments to make you think and moments that you kind of are maybe doubtful of. It will start in volume 2. So I'm excited to see more of the action, and very valid though. All right. Speaking of world and setup, does manhwa have map? I think that's a good question. Rather than the manhwa, I wonder if the original novel might have had more illustrations, because I don't know if you guys, I probably didn't show you guys. Usually when it comes to Korean manhwas, they would have a map. They would publish it as kind of like an extra. However, it might be a spoiler. Let me look up if there is a map. Trash of account. Accounts family map. They do have a map. Let me see where. Let me grab it for you guys. This one's fan made. This one is by another artist, and it does have their. This is of 320. Okay, so I will show you guys a map right now, but I'm gonna use the one from the. This is from the novel. We will use a fan-made map because there is credits to it. So credit to the original person. No, I agree. I think maps really allow you to visualize what's going on and like where, and it gives you a better understanding of like the world. Oh, where'd it go? I thought I saved it. Hold on. I think I have to adjust the format. I did find a map though, don't worry. There we go. Alright, so credit to Shu Enka Art, who illustrated this. This is a map of the Western continent. I will show their full credit. Hold on. As you can see, I think the Rowan Kingdom, Hewis, Puzzle City, these are names that are from the novel. So Hewis is actually Weston. Puzzle City is actually Purdle, which is the land of the rocks. Hewis is actually Weston, which is Kale City. And then Rowan Kingdom is the kingdom that they are currently in. There are many other kingdoms mentioned on screen, but they have not gone into any of these yet at the time of the novel, aside from the Forest of Darkness and Harris Village. But this is a map so far. Sten rolling up at Dragon Cave. Yes, I do think that the more detailed map is not yet available. That's just straight east. Yes, because they haven't explored much of the rest of the place yet. We are setting the background for the rest of these kingdoms, but I think you can get an understanding of how much is going to happen later on. Because don't forget, they will also involve Eastern. Further confused, Whipper was south. I think the fact that the Whale Village is north makes sense because it was always said it was northern with ice, but I also am surprised that the highest islands are so close to Rowan. That is a note for later. But yes, now they talked about Whipper waging war and also fortifying the North Shores. That's a good point. Let me see. Where did I put? Oh. Was there another map? Perun. Yeah, no, everyone who has illustrated this has always put Whipper beneath Rowan. So when they say North Shore, are they referring to the border of Rowan? It might be that's what happened. I will also make sure to link properly in the description. No worries. I totally get it. Especially like when you are reading a novel and you're like, this isn't what I expected, or you're trying to like pinpoint details, that's exactly what I do. Very valid. Alright. We'll put the map away. Convenient, slow, and bread. Reiko, I do appreciate the 3 words you used to summarize. When you say convenient, are you referring to like things happening one or another, or that everything he has found is where he was looking for it? I do agree it's slow because we're setting up, but once the action kicks in, there's so much that happens. So I don't really mind a slow start. I will tell you that when things pick up, there's going to be a lot to keep track of. And bread. Bread was definitely impactful. For me personally, if I had to use 3 words to summarize this volume, it would be... Oh, shoot, I forgot to write it down. I had 3 words. I think I was just gonna say kale, kids, and then... Kale, kids... I can't remember my 3rd word. What was my 3rd word I used to describe this, summarize this book? Kale, adoption, and... Ancient powers? Was that my 3rd? I wrote it down somewhere, but unfortunately I didn't bring it with my notes. Mapless Dragon Party. If we tried to combine all of our 3 words, I think people would be very confused about which one is which. Geography is everything. As someone who has who had to draw layouts of rooms as I was writing them, I agree. Party in the sense of RPG terms. Fair, also fair. But they do party quite a bit too, don't they? Now, if we had to characterize Kale, I know that he currently has a shield, but I don't think that makes him a tank. So if this was an RPG, and I don't have this on my slide, I just thought of it. what would you characterize each of the characters in Kale's party? I do know that Vikros and then Ron, they are assassins. Kale, I would kind of argue he's just a commander. He's not really like an actual tank. Heart gives shield a buff though, yes, but we don't know how much of a buff at this time, right? Is it enough for him to, as a tank, repeatedly take damage? He notes that you can take probably 1 or 2 hits from Choi Han with his shield, but maybe he can take more now. But still, it's not very tanky if he can only take a couple hits, and he also has no intention of getting himself into the fight. Convenient that everything seems to be going the best way for him, and everything he needs is pretty much at his reach, whether he starts or on his way. That is also true. We could argue that that is the benefit of him having a memory, a very, very clear memory, we should say, of the novel, but also of things happening one after another, right? Like he bumped into Venian just before he was going to get the dragon, and then he was suspected because Venian saw him there. But because Venian saw him there, maybe that's why he wasn't suspected as much, because Venian's like, oh yeah, I met him, he's a total loser, we don't have to worry about him, it wasn't him. I totally agree that a lot of the encounters seem to help him set up things. I do think a lot of it is also him knowing how to handle the situations, though. Because arguably, you can have all the opportunities in the world, if you don't know how to capitalize on them, they are not going to be as beneficial to you. So he ain't taking damage, but that heart power gives a buff. Don't know that much yet, but heart did provide 150 years. The recharge on the shield is fast. Also valid, you're right. We do know that the vitality of heart allowed the previous person to live to 150. We can tell that it's actually quite a good buff. It's more of a small but meaningful buff. And because the shield relies on the strength of your heart, we could say that he is doing so much better now that he has it. However, I would also like to argue Kale does not seem to be working out. One of the quickest ways, I would say most effective ways, of improving your heart health is exercising. Arguably, he ain't doing any of that. He doesn't seem to want to do any of that. So even though the heart is giving him a boost, I think it's not as effective as if he were to also exercise. He did give excuse to not exercise. He did. He just said that it doesn't really matter. He's not planning to get into battles. He just wants it as like a backup insurance. His excuse was he's not gonna go and find conflict. And then he goes to the plaza where magic bombs are gonna go off of. So for someone who's trying to avoid battle and not get involved, he is walking right into it. Of course, he always has his reasons, but one thing that you guys will very quickly learn about Kale, he is so quick to say something, but he is truly a man of action, more so than anything. That's what I will say. The next discussion question. Okay, I put this in, because some people have brought it up, but you guys have kind of talked about it. How would you describe the pace of the book? I know it was slow. I know this is the build-up. But if you don't read this volume, you really lose a lot of the foundation that will set you up for volume 2. And like a lot of the other things. Personally, I didn't think it was too slow. Probably because I enjoyed the story a lot. And that's why I recommended it to you guys. But I do know that it takes some time for it to step up. Kale, your shield relies on your heart. How about we go do some cardio? Wait here, I'll go get an ancient power to boost my heart. It'd be easier if... That is exactly his attitude. Exactly. He is... What is it? Like the meme where it's like he's turning his head away from exercise, but he's okay with going through trials to get more power. It's like he's the person to take the long way instead of just doing the straightforward way. Oh my gosh, Kale. Exposition had a lot of repetition, which made it drag on more than I would have liked. Yes, I totally agreed. I do agree that the author often... How do I say this? I think because I'm the kind of person like Kale, I don't mind it. because when you're thinking in your head, it's very easy for me to repeat things. Very easy for me to go over things again. And I think the author, on one hand, don't forget, for you guys to know, the author, I believe, posted this online first. So their chapters have been reviewed and kind of like edited and things like that. But I do think when they first started writing the story, they were kind of, I don't know if new to writing is the right word. I do think this was their first story they published. Let me look into that before I say anything. I do think this is the author's first story. Let me just confirm it. And I will also say this is an award-winning story. Yeah, I think it was their first novel, so it's understandable that there are some things that they haven't quite refined. Yeah, inexperience might be a good one. I do think that they hit something really special with this, but the build-up was slow. The writing does get stronger later on, and I think they have a better grasp on how they want to convey things later on. But very valid. Very valid. I do think that the prologue was kind of unnecessary, in my opinion. Maybe that's just because he does repeat it, but I don't know why they included the prologue and then the first chapter when he kind of just reiterates everything. I feel like the prologue could have been better as like the back of the book to draw you in. But yeah, you know what? Very valid. Very valid. For a second, I thought my alarm was going off. I had to check. Oh, sorry. So I've kind of reached the end of my questions. The discussion questions, that is. I do want to share some of my favorite scenes with you guys because I honestly thought I would ramble more. I'm really enjoying it though. I'm really glad that you guys are... is it safe to say that you guys at least thought it was a decent read? It was okay? Because personally, one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys was, do you all want to continue reading the series? I do want to continue doing book club, but if you guys are like, the story isn't really for me, I think that's also valid, and I would be willing to look at other stories. But what do you guys think? Do you guys want to continue reading this story for book club? And by the way, the stream isn't ending. I have other things to share with you guys. It's just... I didn't order this quite right. Already started, gotta finish. True. And I do think another option we have is that because I think 3 volumes are out. Only 3 volumes are out. Number 4 is gonna come out, I think, in a couple months. But what we can do is we can read the story as the volumes come out, and then we can also mix in some other stories while we wait for like the official translations to come out. Just because it is very difficult to... I don't want to go into it, but let's not recommend anything other than official translations for the sake of protecting people who may be doing it out of their own personal interest. Let's say that. Need to see whales in probably late book 2 or early book 3. Yes, agreed. I think once the whales, we'll meet whales and mermaids. What else is there? Elves. They've mentioned elves. They've mentioned a lot of things. Okay, good. I was worried that like the build-up, I was worried that the slow start might have turned some people off. So you need to map it out in your head. You know what? You're right. You can make your own version of the map as well. maybe by the end of this, we'll have like a book club map to refer to. We could do a stream where we try to make a map if that is valid. Although I don't draw maps, I'd have to figure out how to do that. But, very, very true. I'm also very, very excited. Some of my favorite parts of the book, I would love to see what you guys think of them. Would love to. My next question, since I do think consensus is it's okay to continue, and if anyone is like, I just want to listen, that's totally valid as well. Gosh, no, I will talk enough. The next question is, do you guys need more time for the next volume then? Because I did get some feedback. I apologize as someone who is constantly reading. 300, I think I finished in a couple hours. But would you guys want more time for the next novel? So instead of like once a month, it would be like once in 1.5 a month, every 2 months kind of deal. Like, what do you guys feel like would be a good amount of time for you guys to read? Because one thing I kind of want to do is I do want to do more Wednesday streams, but I do want to reserve like a Wednesday for book club. We'll need to choose what to read once we're out of material for this one. Yes, I will definitely make polls once we get closer to the end. So I will be open to suggestions if you guys have books you want to recommend. But I will definitely have a poll so we vote. Once a month is a good time to read a book, okay? Does anyone feel like you need more time? Which is also okay. I understand that everyone has different schedules, different reading speeds. Maybe you just like enjoy spending like rereading the book a couple times so that you can get a good feel for it. That's also totally valid. I read this, I think, 3 times in order to do the plot overview, and I still feel like I could have condensed it a little better. I definitely could have had like some more illustrations towards the end. But I did read it like, I think 3 times. Simply complete your task. Also valid. Reading something that isn't a 300-page novel every month. No, I think once a month would be my I guess my maximum. Like, I wouldn't want to do more than once a month, just because I like to kind of like not only do this once a month, but also like I want to have time to like make the presentation for you guys. Now that I kind of have an idea of how to like run it, I think I'll be able to refine my presentation for the next one. Also, let me know if you guys ever feel like I'm moving too fast and you still want to send your comment, go ahead and do it. Sometimes like I'm trying to figure out my own pacing. Like, I don't want to leave, if I don't want anyone to feel awkward and feel obligated to, but if you guys have something to say, send it. Go ahead, marshmallow or chat. I'm always willing to go backwards to discuss things. 300 pages for the end of the month, and in the middle of the month, 10 to 20 chapters of a comic. That is interesting idea. Would you guys be open to also discussing manhwas instead of just novels? Because I think if we did manhwas, maybe I might still do it once a month. It would depend. Because I think this volume covered 50 chapters. 50 chapters of the manhwa. But there are definitely some manhwas that I would love to would be, how do I say this? The books I kind of want to do for book club are lighthearted. Not that there isn't going to be some violence and war in these stories. It's just like I tend to prefer stories that aren't too heavy, because I would rather focus on like the characters instead of like constant drama. That's just my preference. Just my preference. Can you give your recommendation? I'd be open to recommendations, sure. If you have a recommendation for a manhwa that you would like to maybe go through for book club, I'm open to those. I don't think I'd do like a novel and a manhwa in the same month, just because I wouldn't want to overwhelm people and make people feel like it is homework. But I would be open to doing like a novel and then doing some different manhwas and then seeing like how that works. I think that could be fun. That could be fun. That opens up more options. Because I was looking at other novels that I could potentially do, and I just preferred the ones that were like light novels. Which isn't bad. It's just like we would definitely be comparing them, if that makes sense. Like I pretty much enjoy similar stories, as you guys know. But yeah, it would definitely open up possibilities. I'm gonna move on to the next slide, but if you guys have like recommendations for novels or manhwas, definitely put them in the comment section below the video so that I can see them. You can also put them in chat, but if you put them in the comment section, I'm more likely to be able to like record it down and like it'll stand out more. Not only because it's good for the stream, but it will definitely be easier to find the recommendation instead of just scrolling for chat. Both are fine. Both are fine. Just wanted to say. Okay, let me tell you guys some of my favorite quotes. If you guys have a favorite quote from the novel, feel free to put it in chat. One of my favorite quotes in this book is, "No wonder nobody ended up taking it, but why would the author mention something so handy that was never actually used?" I really like this quote because already Kale is bringing into question and he is doubting the author of the novel. I think something we don't often do is doubt the perspective of the person who's writing the novel. Does that make sense? So like I said, like we are seeing things from Kale's perspective because we already are under the impression that Kale is objective. He's going into this world who has read the backstory, and now he's kind of like seeing the characters in front of him. He's comparing the book to like the characters. Kind of is, kind of isn't. He has that bias. But the fact that Kale's already like doubting, and he's like, And we could say that maybe, because this does happen. It's happened to me as I wrote. No drama, I can't. No, drama's okay. It's just like I don't like novels or stories that is like they are dealing with conflict every single chapter. It gets so tiring. It gets really overwhelming too. But I think drama is okay if it is how do I say this? If it is like the drama is occurring to them, I prefer it instead of like being betrayed by everyone around you. You cannot sleep. This person, everyone is secretly wanting to hurt you. Like, does that make sense? I prefer getting to know the characters and seeing them grow, and conflict is fine, but like, it gets really tiring if people are constantly bringing conflict to them instead of like them dealing with conflict. I wonder what that says about my conflict style, but anyways. The reason why this is my favorite quote is because, how do I say this? Kale being in the novel, he is kind of doubting how reliable the novel is for him to reference in this world. So, like when you guys mentioned that how Lark's transformation already differentiated the novel from the world, it's almost like Kale can only briefly or take the novel with a grain of salt for him to actually be in this world. Instead of treating it like a step-by-step guide with all the answers and this person's like this and they will never change, it's more along the lines of, oh yeah, this can kind of happen or this can kind of happen. But authors are kind of purposeful, right? Sometimes authors do things and we're like, the curtains are green because the character is sad, and the author's like, oh no, I just like the color green or blue, sorry. And I think that's so interesting. So interesting because you could very well argue, maybe the author wanted to use it and he forgot about it and he never brought it up again. But we don't know that, and I like it that he's already questioning it, because once you start having questions, maybe something will come out of it, maybe something won't. But it just shows he's active, he's actively thinking instead of letting the plot happen to him. I like that Kale is actively trying to deal with things and like actively living his life instead of like being a marionette or like letting the plot happen to him, which he kind of does, but I would argue that he is definitely more active as a character. Another of my favorite quote is, "It's so silly. He also only read 5 volumes." Exactly, yes. He knows that there is more to the story that he hasn't read yet, but he already and only has 5 volumes at his disposable. At his disposal. He does not know who the organization is, does not know their true motive, does not know who they are. I argue we've seen more about like the organization in 1 volume than he has in 5. Some older stuff could have been set up for 6 or above. Exactly, yes. And I think that's why, that's what I'm just saying. It's good to question it. You don't know if you're right or wrong. But I would argue in a discussion, there is no real right or wrong because everyone's interpreting it their own way. You know? I just like it that he is like, oh yeah, thinking. You know? That's the kind of character I really like. That's probably why I like the story. I really like Kale as a character. I do like original Kale and current Kale, I would like to say. One of my other favorite quotes is so silly. It's just like Kale snapped his fingers and 2 little black bundles on and home fell from the cave ceiling almost immediately. It's so silly and so small, but personally for me, it was very impactful because it was like the first time he's kind of carried out a mission with the other characters, and they're already moving so well. They're already like on the same wavelength, and of course, On and Hong are amazing, adorable, so cute. And to me, like I really wanted to see the scene in a manhwa. I felt like it would have been so cool, so cool. Also speaks a lot to like me. The kind of thing I like, the kind of thing I like. I feel like seeing some of my favorite quotes and my favorite scenes, you guys will get a handle of what I look for in a story. Whenever I pause, it's to drink water. Hold on. And I've hit the bottom of my cup. One of the most unrealistic things I tend to find in isekai stories like this is that the isekai person knows everything, so I very much prefer Kale knowing only to a certain point. Oh, very true. I think like the stories where a character is a isekai and they're like, I know how to redo plumbing, or I remember all these steps to make medicine, or I know how to recreate all these modern conveniences. It is so crazy because sometimes it's okay to not know everything. But of course, the novel wants them to show off something. I think some stories do a great job of a character having a specific specialization, and then it makes sense. But characters who come in and they're like modernizing the new revolution it kind of becomes a story where like you can enjoy it, you can still read it, and it's still a good story, but you kind of have to like turn off part of your brain in order to enjoy it. Your favorite quotes are literally anything your boy Hans says. Hans is so fun. Isn't it so interesting that in the span of 1 volume, Hans went from like covering his head and being scared and flinching whenever Kale was near, even though Kale has literally never thrown anything at anyone except gangsters, to now being comfortable enough to sass back at the original, the Rokusu Kale. I think that is also a clear sign of like Hans's strength of character. He adapts so quickly. He's like, oh yeah, I can joke around this person. He's so quick with it too. 10 out of 10. Hello, welcome. We are currently discussing some of our favorite quotes from the story Lout. I never remember this title. What is it? Lout of Accounts Family, because I only remember the original one, Trash of Accounts Family. Even if you consumed everything, the story has more people would have already forgotten the details. Exactly. I think there'd be so many things you wouldn't remember or overlooked. So very valid, the fact that Kale is dealing with so little information. Would I feel Dr. Stone is an isekai? I'm actually not familiar with Dr. Stone. Let me look up the story. Dr. Stone. I am familiar with the name of Dr. Stone. I am not familiar with the plot. Petrifies. I think that the fact I'm reading a very brief plot on Wikipedia, the fact that the main character is from the same, how do I say this? Instead of him being transported to another world, they are simply time traveling. I'd argue it's not isekai, it's more time travel because they're all just frozen in time, isn't it? Kim has a good memory. He rewrote all five volumes early in the story. That's also a good point. We know already that Kim Rok-soo has a great memory. I will say that it is a very important character trait for him, but he does seem to remember everything so clearly that he can not only write it out, but then he still has it in his head to pull out at other times. He never seems to have to like refer to any notes or have to like constantly rewrite, because you could argue some people remember things better after they rewrite them. He doesn't have to rewrite them to remember anything. MC has an eidetic memory where they even remember the name of every detail of they do and say in the story. No, that's okay. I understand, like, one thing I'm okay with is if it's something I've brought up before, it's okay to bring up even later in the stream. But I do understand how you also feel, because sometimes when I address things in chat, it is a little out of order. But I would not have answered your question if I was not okay with answering it. So please don't worry about that. But yeah, I will give you a bit of a spoiler, Reiko. He does have an eidetic memory. But it is something that is plot important. So it's not just like, oh, he's a genius, he was born with an eidetic memory. There is it is an important character point of his, and it will return later. So yes, that is a spoiler, but know that I wanted to bring it up because he does have an eidetic memory. It is a fact. Returning to a new Stone Age. Okay, like I said, I'm not familiar with the story, but I don't mind. I was looking for recommendations for things to read, and not only that, but things to discuss for book club. So that's what I thought your question was for. I'm just making sure I caught up with chat. But let me give you guys another of my favorite quotes. It is from the moment that Kale rescues the baby dragon, because you guys know I love that moment. In contrast to the dying dragon Choi Han encountered in the novel, this dragon had a strong desire to live. It dreamt of freedom. Hence, its eyes were full of weariness, animosity, and rebellion. I like that gaze, said Kale. It was the gaze of a dragon. Is that not a crazy line? The thing is, like, imagine you're that baby dragon. You have been tortured and hurt for so long. Someone comes to free you, and you've just been hoping and wanting to escape yourself. And instead, when you look at this new person, it tells you, I like that gaze. Because don't forget that Kale knows, Roksu knows that this dragon has constantly been told that it hates, that the reason it's been tortured for so long is that Benny hates the fact that its gaze is so defiant. So for Kale to come forward and say, I like that gaze. And for him, he doesn't say it out loud, but for him to recognize this is the gaze of a dragon, this is how he should be. He should want to live. Crazy line, so impactful for me. One of my favorites. I do have all the page numbers if you guys want to refer to them. But very, very, like, some of my favorite writing is that dragon rescuing scene. Like, I think that chapter, great chapter. Great chapter. Probably my favorite chapter in this volume. I think it was so many things. Like, if I could write an essay, I would write an essay. I could definitely write an essay. Oh, and I mentioned this one already. This is definitely the one where I did my own self-styling. I will live. I will escape. I will not be tamed. Oh my goodness. Incoming 40-minute video essay. I would if I could edit. If I could just... I will say that I was having a great track record of editing my other videos, but when I wanted to focus on, like, the inspiration I got for the plot overview, I kind of derailed my video editing, but I guess from this stream, you guys can kind of get a sense of like how my video essays from my video book channel are gonna go. It's a pretty good preview. It's a pretty good preview of what I kind of want to do and how I approach reading and how I approach my stories. But I definitely would. Rather than a video essay, I would do a written essay really, really quickly. I don't even need AI to write the essay. Gosh. Just write what's in your head. Ugh. Anyways, I don't want to talk about that. Let's not talk about other things. Another favorite scene, this one is just silly. It is so silly. It is the scene where they are in Perthel, which is Puzzle City, and then I think it's when the cats are talking about like how Hans told them about the rock towers. And he's like, oh, if you wanted to make a wish, what do you want to wish for? And he said, for everybody, including my new little rejected. Kale just immediately cuts the kids off. It's so funny for me because at that moment, he's in complete denial that he has already adopted a third child, especially a dragon. He's just in so deep. The denial, denial is not just a river in Egypt. It is literally Kale Henatus in this case. So funny to me. My humor. Oh, okay. After this, I think I only have like a couple more slides. I have only probably 3 more slides. I cannot believe I managed to cram 52 slides in 2 hours. So after the stream, I'm gonna have like, I was gonna joke and say, I'm gonna have a feedback stream. Please let me know what you thought of the first stream, but we'll talk about that later. Surprised it was only 52 slides. The thing is, when I told everyone else, like my family and things, like I had 52 slides, they're like, oh my gosh, you're gonna bore your chat. I'm like, maybe. I wanted to believe that you guys are here because you do want me to talk about things for more than 52 slides. But know that for you guys, I condensed what I wanted into 52. I had way more I wanted to go into. But I also had to keep in mind my voice, which is already shot. But it was worth it. Worth it. Anyways, in this scene, can you guys guess from my hint? This is when I stopped typing because I ran out of time. From page 249, do you guys know what this scene is? I should have had it like, maybe I'll fit the future, I'll be like, guess what this scene is? And it'll be like a pop quiz. I appreciate it. I'm glad that we are having a really good discussion, and I am really having a lot of fun talking about this with you guys. I hope you guys have enough time to respond. Definitely let me know if you want me to like pause or like, how do I say this? I'm gonna learn how to be better at giving you guys time to respond because it does take time for you guys to type. I'm just speaking. You guys need to type. But for this scene, if no one has any guesses, I don't mind telling you. But this is such a funny scene. It is a very long scene. That's probably why I didn't type it. But I also think it'd be really funny if someone was currently flipping through their book like I am to try to find the scene. But this, 249, Kayla is oblivious to his own personality, is the scene where Taylor Sten tries to warn Kale about the Crown Prince, and he tells him, and Kale's like, oh, don't worry. I plan to remain as quiet as possible before returning home. I don't like being in the limelight. Everyone in the carriage with him, the kittens, the dragon, someone who is hungover, Cage, and Taylor are judging him. They're like, oh, he doesn't realize? Is he sure They're literally all judging him because even though Cage and Taylor have only spent like I think a couple nights with him, they were not together very long during the journey, but they already have a handle on his personality, and they're like, "You are you sure?" And it's so funny because he's the for someone as strategic, as considerate, as constantly being aware of what he's doing, like Kale, for him to be in a moment where everyone is just like he doesn't see it because he really doesn't see it. Even Kale isn't perfect. And I love him that way. It's so funny. The next one, I think this one's more obvious. It's when like Lark, his name is actually Locke in the other translation, but Lark, when he is growling and then Hong goes up and just hits him in the face with his paw, a literal paw attack, the cutest, deadliest attack in the world. How adorable. How adorable. It's one of the things where like I wanted to include the manhwa scene in this, but I just didn't have time to get the manhwa panel. But it's so cute. I can just imagine it. The little red kitten pawing at like a growling like Lark's only 13, right? But he is much taller than his age and he's currently going through like his transformation. But Hong is just like, "Oh yeah." When they were paired with Lark, they also yeah. Oh my goodness, the kittens. The fact that Kale is like, learn how you will defeat these kind of people in the future. And then they take it so seriously. They like spend time with him and then they are actively trying to like take him out. And Kale encourages it. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It is so good. So many great moments. The kittens are definitely some of my favorite characters in this book. All their moments are so good. And their responses, I really love how like even though they're younger, their experiences, or how do I say this? They have a really good handle on Kale and they seem to like read him really well. So it's always really fun to see their perspectives. My last favorite scene, this is the last one I had on this PowerPoint, is when he's literally using Lark's berserk moment and he's teaching the kids. He's telling them, "Don't be scared. Watch them. Learn from them. Figure out how to make it your own." Whether it's the dragons or the kids, he's literally sitting there with them instead of like leaving them there and leaving himself. He sits there with them, watches them, and then tells them to absorb and learn. I really love that Kale is constantly looking for teachable moments and he's like utilizing what he can, and the fact that his mind works so quickly to do that, crazy. But definitely seeing that is like such a contrast as well to the roof, isn't it? Because like Kale doesn't have kids. It's not mentioned. I think if he had kids, he mentions that he's an orphan and that he has no one waiting for him back home. But he is literally being a better parent to these two kittens and a dragon than the roof is, and he has 3 kids. Is that not like I think that's a really interesting comparison we can make between Rooksu and the roof. Alright, that's all I had. Do you guys have any thoughts, any discussion points? I think in the future, I will have a segment where I'm still open at 2 now, by the way. I'm not ending stream yet. Is there anything that we haven't already mentioned that you want to talk about? Can we gush about Taylor? Yes, we can gush about Taylor. What do you want to gush about? Taylor, Sten, way better than Benny. Hold on, I was trying to look. I had like notes written for Taylor. We can absolutely gush about Taylor. The oldest child, the fact that Benny, like, can I mention something? You say Taylor and I thought of this. Benny mentions that when he sees Kale, he thinks of him and Taylor because he sees Bassin as like the younger, smarter, more capable younger brother with a trash older brother. And I honestly think at that moment, I'm like, Benny does not see. Benny has no room to say anything like that. Taylor is so amazing. he is not only calm, and I will argue that it seems like Kale, that moment where Kale like pities him, it clearly allows him to let something go. Does that make sense? Like I think it was such an important moment, which I can't go too much into. Some people become the kind of parent they wish they had. Exactly. It's just such a great contrast to see him parenting the kids so well, even though he doesn't have that figure in his life. Better than the roof. Manga and anime. I think of fruit gushers when I think of Gush, but what do you guys want to talk about Taylor? The humility and self-respect. Agreed. Even though he is a Marquise's oldest son, he is someone who is used to being at a higher level. He is used to, I guess, even though like it's mentioned that his family's literally crazy, he's still remaining sane. If On has the single brain cell among Kale's family, besides, Kale having the strategic brain cell, we could argue that Taylor is like the black sheep of his family, because I think they mentioned that Bennion literally tortures the dragon to get away or deal with stress from his younger siblings, who are just as crazy as he is. Taylor is a black sheep, but in the best way in his family. For being threatened when that boar showed up at camp, also true. Instead of being like hiding behind Kale, Taylor was immediately ready to like apologize, take responsibility, and go off and deal with the issue. He is such a great guy. Yes, the absolute guts on him to like time it so that Bennion wouldn't be able to complain and get him thrown out, but also going after the royal family, that took some kind of bravery, took some kind of, I was gonna say, gumption. Sanity is a hard virtue to preserve. It is. And I think that makes Taylor even more amazing, that not only does he have his sanity, he has a calm and gentle determination. Like he was literally traveling, doing whatever he can. I would argue he didn't give up, although we can kind of tell based on Kale's reaction and when he said, your eyes, your ears, your mouth, and your heart are still alive, You could tell that he really needed someone to remind him that even though he was in a wheelchair and he was disabled, that does not define who he is. Somehow getting princess power. Agreed. We don't get to see that. I would have loved to hear how Taylor was able to negotiate with the prince in order for the prince to use his one-time healing star power. Something that he had and held on to, but he was willing to use on Taylor. To be a fly on the wall, to hear how Taylor negotiated that, you can tell he's very good at what he does. Not very good at what he does. He is clearly very capable, very intelligent, and he knows how to deal with it. But don't forget, he also warned Kale. He warned Kale that the crown prince is crafty. He said that to be careful of the crown prince, and he still did all of that. Oh my goodness. Taylor Stan, the man that you are. Definitely. I mean, the fact that he came from such a terrible family just makes him seem even more amazing. Like, I'm not gonna lie, chat. When I was making the PowerPoint, I wanted to put a halo over Taylor Sten, but I was so worried it would come off as like Taylor. Not only like, I wanted to come off as him being too good for this world, but then it would come off as like Taylor potentially not surviving. Because it was just the halo. I should have given him the angel wings. Also, thinking of the terrible Sten family, the fact that like his dad actively encourages all the kids to fight, how did he have a kid like Taylor? How did he have a kid like Taylor? It is like Marquise used up all his good cells, I guess, on Taylor, and then clearly the rest of them are kind of like unhinged. we never really learn, even later on, we never really learn more about like the rest of Taylor's family. So I can say this isn't a spoiler, but they are crazy. Some of the things, like, based on the things that the Marquise was okay with, we can only imagine how crazy they are. Absolute nuts. But so amazing. I also cannot wait to see more from Taylor. We don't need or want to know anything about the rest of Taylor's family. Also true. Also true. But then again, I kind of want to see how Taylor overthrows the family. It's unfortunate we just don't get to see that. But I would love to have seen how he like overthrows all these terrible people, you know? Sometimes it's like it would have been so satisfying to see. I always wondered if the author would have included special scenes, but they never did, so I can mention it. My goodness. My goodness. Taylor Sten, 10 out of 10. He clearly became the favorite character, or one of the favorite characters, one of the standout characters, didn't he? Is there anything else that, like, I didn't bring up that you guys want to bring up? Like discussion things, chapters, scenes, quotes. You've gotten better. Thank you. I've worked really hard. I didn't want to comment on it in case I jinxed myself, but I've been working on them. I actually had one where we were talking about Rowan because, like, Rowan is known as the city of boulders. I was like, wow, the parties must rock there. But I refrained myself earlier when we were bringing up parties. It's okay. I make myself laugh. That's all I need to do. All right. I was slightly disappointed with Choi Han not mentioning Secret Organization's emblem when seeing Kale again. I think he did. Are you talking about after he rescued Locke? I think after they dealt, if you're talking about the moment after they rescued Locke, I think he does report to Kale later on, and that's when Kale realizes that instead of assassination squad, they sent out their core squad. Yes, never really outwardly connected Kale with the emblem. Oh, so are you saying how Kale knew the symbol of the organization? So you're saying that when he gave the fake uniform to Choi Han never brought it up. Yes, okay. So I think that was kind of dealt with. That's why Kale brought Choi Han to the God of Death. I think at that point, Choi Han wanted to believe in Kale. He never really just told him true. I think at that point, Choi Han, from my understanding and my interpretation, he really wanted to believe in Kale because he'd only seen Kale do good. However, because Kale realized this and preemptively brought Choi Han to the God of Death when he said, I don't know the organization, I only know some of the things they're doing. So I think Choi Han is under the impression that Kale is either someone who can see the future or has some kind of connection that he cannot disclose. Like, I don't know, maybe his like parentage, his used to be like involved or something. I do think that Choi Han, because they mentioned that Choi Han is smart, he's not someone who shows it a lot. He kind of like lets people treat him unassumingly, but Choi Han is mentioned to be smart. I think he deliberately didn't bring it up because Choi Han isn't always straightforward. If you remember when Choi Han was thinking about Ron, he instantly clocked that Ron was dangerous. But instead of like immediately noticing something, he kind of waited. He collected his information. He's like, oh, if Kale knew that Ron is strong, he would have brought Ron with him. And so that's when he spoke out. So Choi Han's the kind to internalize and like observe before he brings himself. in personal terms of story writing, I would have liked doubt in their relationship. I understand that because it seems kind of crazy that Choi Han, someone who was mentioned that he had to survive alone in the forest, he just lost everyone that he cared about, and now for someone to conveniently come into his life and help him so many things, for him to have such faith in him. I do agree that having a little bit of doubt would have been more natural of a progression. How do I say this? I feel like if I say anything, it's gonna be spoilery, so I'm gonna avoid anything I'm thinking of. But I do agree that at this point, it's a bit abrupt, isn't it? It is very abrupt. It seems like all of a sudden, Kale has a very trusting, completely loyal person. But I would also argue that because of the vow of death, where Kale is still under its influence, by the way, he's still. I think if Kale had turned on Choi Han, he would die. That is probably Choi Han's insurance. He's like, oh yeah, his guy is still here. He promised he had no intention of hurting me, you know? But also very fair, very valid points. It is a bit of a convenient thing. No, agreed. I agree. I also think like if things didn't like how do I say this? The fact that as soon as Kale goes out, there is no filler. He's like always encountering something, right? Isn't that a little plot devicey? Because it almost seems like it's meant to happen. Because he knows things that happen from Choi Han's perspective, but even when he is just like, for example, just going to the capital, and you could say that, yes, he's gonna bump into other people on his way to the capital, it's kind of crazy that he is conveniently bumping into certain characters at certain times. Almost like it's trying to set things up for him, if that makes sense. I agree, convenient is something of all isekai, isn't it? It is definitely something of all isekai. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't think I can say anything else without spoiling it, because even though I've read this novel 3 times now, I do not remember if certain things were mentioned. But you guys all brought up really great points. Now, I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but that is all I've prepared for today. I think in the future, I will have like a free talk slide, and I will have them more like spread out. Just don't mind me right now. I'm trying to like vocalize how I plan to like improve. If you guys still have things you want to bring up, please feel free to. But I am gonna try to like start wrapping things up. Personally, for me, I really enjoy talking to you guys. I really hope I can. One thing I want to learn is to give you guys more time, or to learn how to give you guys more time without me sitting here and potentially making you uncomfortable or feel like you have to talk, even though I know you guys wouldn't talk if you didn't want to. I do have the marshmallow option that I refresh just in case. However, I do think I want to put more free talks in between, so that you guys will have like a chance, for example, when we bring up favorite scenes or characters or plot, and then might make it a bit easier for you guys to bring up things instead of like all at the end like this. I think in a word, technically Kale is able to harm Choi Han, by the way. Yes. That is something Kale mentioned, because Kale was the one who took the vow, right? So the vow depends on how Kale perceives harming Choi Han. It perceives how Kale interprets certain things. That is why I think Kale left that as his own insurance, that if Choi Han did potentially harm him, Kale still has the ability to protect himself and harm, quote-unquote, Choi Han if he felt he needed to. So that is definitely a loophole that Kale used. That's why he said they spend so long writing these vows before they say them. The truth is that he did not want to harm him. Present tense, yes. So like I said, he was so careful with what he said. Once the smoke left, he is free. From that particular value, true. He did make a vow that if in the future he learned of the organization's name, he would tell Choi Han. He is still beholden to that one. But you are absolutely right that that particular vow, the harm one, he kind of was like, oh yeah, as I'm making this vow, I am not. Something that was like brought up in, how do I say this? Novel readers before this translation came out brought up something that I think is interesting that they did not translate in this. So let me explain. In the vows that Kale did, because you guys brought it up, he mentions that Basin is his younger brother, which is truth. However, in the novel, they mentioned that Violin brought Basin with her to the duchy, to the Count's family. So it's implied, kind of, that Basin, who is not that much younger than Kale, is Violin's son, but not Darus, right? But in the original Korean novel, I believe that they used the words my full-blooded younger brother. So Kale, Roksu, when he read the novel, he had assumed that Basin was in fact Daruf and Violin's child. So a lot of people bring up this point as like, oh my gosh, Kale almost himself, because he misunderstood this particular point. That is why the words they use are so important, the interpretation. And I think the argument that a lot of the readers made for that was that because Kale truly believed at that point that Basin was Kale Hednatus's full-blooded younger brother, nothing happened to him. Even though that is not true. So that also brings up the argument that, let's say, for example, the god of death, when he judges whether or not someone is keeping their vow or not, it is purely based on that person's full intent and belief when they are making the vow. It was a really important point, but I didn't bring it up because it wasn't properly translated, and I didn't know if it would be of interest to you guys, if I should say that. Also, I probably was in my notes that I missed. But because you brought it up, I really wanted to mention that point as well. But isn't it crazy, the fact that so many nobilities use this vow to like keep promises, make agreements and things like that? I think it's very crazy that this is how the Temple of Death is making their money, because Kale left like $10,000 as a quote-unquote donation after he made this vow. So clearly he's doing it based on his knowledge of the novel. So clearly this is something that has happened before. Does that make sense? I don't know. I thought it was an interesting point. So many small details. So many things where you're kind of like, how did he know that? But because Kale Hednatus as Roksu does have an eidetic memory, he's able to do that. And I'm willing to let him go for it. It's okay. It's okay. But yes, I think in the future, I do want to ask you guys for your feedback, but I don't want to do it as a formal survey. I thought of it. I'm not going to lie. I thought of giving you guys like a Google form and asking you to give me your feedback, but I think I'll wait until we've done a couple of streams. And then if you guys are willing, I will ask if you guys are willing. I will make a Google form so you guys can kind of like let me know how you perceive it, how I can improve it. And after we've done a couple of these sessions, a couple of them, and that way you guys can like, I can try to improve things as they are, and then I would also appreciate you guys' feedback. Okay, so I think that is it. We are almost hitting 2.5 hours. This was really fun. I honestly want to go longer. I definitely would love to know if you guys still have anything to discuss, but my voice is definitely shot. I don't think I can continue. That being said, if you guys have anything you still want to talk about, feel free to put them in the discussion in the comment section below. We never got to predictions. Yes, oh true. Oh gosh. Are you guys okay? If you guys are okay with it, I'm gonna step away for a minute and I'm gonna go get some more water and then we can do some predictions. So many characters we gloss over. I know. One of the things I want to improve on is potentially reducing my plot overview. Cough drop too. I don't have cough drops, but I will step away. No, I'll be okay though, yeah. I'll be fine. Fortunately, I don't have to worry about it because usually a good night's rest is okay with me. I've been resting my voice all day. It's fine. But yeah, I do want to do at least 10 more minutes with you guys. So let me just step away to get some water and then we can talk about a couple of things. And then I will try to figure out how to do this in the future. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. So I don't think we will get to do more characters. I do think that next time I'm going to try to break things up into categories. Maybe that will help and then we'll be able to address more things. Let me just write that down. What kind of predictions do you guys have for the next volume? You guys can start writing them. I think we can do like probably 5 or 10 minutes. And then that will probably be my max. But I'm going to start writing things down that I want to improve for the next stream. So don't mind me if I'm quiet. Open discussion. Plot. Kara. Scenes. Predictions. Halfway would be Plaza and Resolution, and will probably be Wales. Interesting. So you think that the Plaza will take a lot longer? I kind of want to remember how it goes, but I do think that Volume 2 picks up. So Ron would do something with the Plaza. I see you're hoping to see Ron again. What about Vicross, huh? I think the fact that Vicross and Hans are there, but it seems like Ron is taking Kale to the event, so it makes sense that you would connect his involvement. Also with Wales, Dragon would struggle. Interesting. Is it because he's young, or do you think it's because of the whale's personality? We don't have much on Vicross, but we know Ron has a connection with Arm. That is true. Ron has already, I think we've already gotten a little bit of his backstory. How he is someone who is actively going towards Arm, trying to find them, wanting to deal with them. Also valid, where Arm, especially because this is something that Arm is doing, so he would be there in order to realize, hey, they really are on the continent, because he was the one who realized that Choi Han fought the assassins who were associated with Arm, right? I do wonder if Ron noticed that the blue wolf tribe children were also attacked by Arm. I wonder if we'll start a siege situation on our starting city later. Interesting. Do you mean Weston? I always want to call it Hewis, but it's Weston in this novel. Young whales are super buff. Also, a top tier magic dragon would need to struggle for plot. You're not wrong. I think there are very few overpowered characters in this novel. Now, we can argue about this later, but there are not very many overpowered. They are very strong, have no doubt about that. But I do think we will definitely see moments where even Kale, our protagonist, may struggle. One thing I can't really predict anything. I know the story, so I'm just interested to see your guys' predictions. Because anything I predict might might end up be a spoiler. We do still need a gauge for the dragon, so he kind of just trumps all struggles. True, but right now the dragon hasn't had to do anything, right? All he's done is show that he's capable of magic. He's picking it up quickly as Kale's observation, but don't forget that Kale does not seem to come from a world with magic, right? He doesn't seem to have like a background of knowledge. He's just basing it off of his perspective of the novel. So I think it'll be interesting because Rosalind mentions that dragons are the epitome of magic, right? But it'll be interesting to see, as someone who's lifelong pursuing magic, how she perceives the dragon's magic. She's very impressed so far, don't get me wrong. But I think as the dragon encounters more people who are capable or like of magic, it'll be interesting to see how they gauge his abilities, right? And I don't think he's really had a struggle. Maybe his struggle is the fact like he has the ability but not the experience. Like when Kale was instantly able to find him because even though he was invisible, you could see all his 4 paws on the ground. Those kind of things are kind of like things that he doesn't know yet because he has been locked away for so long, you know? So yes, you're right. I agree. Those will all be very interesting to see. What else do you guys think? Like, what kind of, how do I say this? Are there any other characters you anticipate we might see more of? Or is there a character that you think might play a bigger role in the upcoming events? I know we've mentioned Ron, I know we've mentioned the dragon, we've talked about potentially having another conflict in the starting city. But what do you think? Because you mentioned that there are so many characters we glossed over. Are there any characters you think that may get their chance to shine in the next volume? Kind of thing. Predictions. Will Kale get souvenirs for the city? You're right! Gosh. That's gonna be like the biggest thing we'll have to worry about. This time it was the pinky promise. Next time is, did Kale remember with his eidetic memory to get souvenirs for Bastin and Lily? Absolutely, that is an important plot point. Plot kerosene. I imagine if the whole party moves together, more lore for Rosalind and Lark. True. I'd also be curious. Actually, like I said, anything that's a plot point. Also, the 10 wolf tribe children that they have with them, right? All of a sudden, they've added 10 more kids. So it'll be interesting to see how all of them integrate into the party, not just the dynamics, but also in terms of like getting more backstory. We get a lot of backstory for the ancient powers. It's okay. The Henatus County is just made of money. Everything is marble. They can afford 10 more mouths. They're fine. Honestly, if Kale increased his budget, do you guys think the roof would care? If Kale just didn't say anything and he just started feeding more people. You don't know that? Maybe the marble there is special. No, I'm just kidding. Of course. They'll just carve. But I think there was a scene where Hans reported what Kale was doing to the roof, but he still didn't do anything about it. That's why I'm like, if Kale was like, hey, I want to increase in my budget, would the roof actually like notice or like figure out that all of a sudden his son has adopted like 13 kids? I'm trying to write down. I think I mentioned, oh yeah, Google form. Kahoot? Google form. Feedback. All right. I think. Do you guys have any other predictions you'd like to toss in just before we end? I do think I'm gonna have to end the stream here. This has been so fun. Honestly, I would want to do more, but I think I will better manage my pacing in the next one, and then hopefully that will allow me to hear more from you guys as well. Could just send kids to the roof, known for wealth and military. Oh, that's another prediction. I see. It'd be interesting to see if the roof, because they mentioned that the wolf kids and the wolf tribe are abandoned by the gods, right? That's why potions don't work on them. It'd be interesting to see if the roof has preconceived notions against these other races. Known for wealth and military might, but also very valid because why not, right? But I guess we'll just have to. I think one of the things that Kale did mention, let me see if it's mentioned here. Did I read ahead? Hold on. Okay, I think one of the things, yes, it's on page 369. There it is. So because you brought it up, Lark brings up that the kids are willing to fight. They are willing to fight to eat in exchange for Kale taking them in, but Kale says, enough nonsense. You want little kids to become knights? You asked me to protect the wolf children, but this condition of yours seems to go against that. So Kale's already expressed that he refuses to train the young children, even though they could, in fact, do it because, again, military and things like that. But he's against it because they're kids. So it'll be interesting to see how he follows up on this because how else can the kids contribute so that they can have a place in the county? I had to think of how to express it. In the county, if Kale does not plan for them to do it through military. But good. I wanted to make sure because sometimes when I remember things, it's because I have finished the story and I wanted to make sure I didn't give too many spoilers. But it was an interesting thought, and it'll be interesting to see if maybe Daroof wants to use them as military and Kale's against it. What would Daroof do if Kale opposed it? Probably just roll over. Modern views and situations and older ones. It is. But I think Kale is very focused on kids. He's focused on the fact that they're kids. Not that they are incapable, because he's shown that through On and Hong, as well as the dragon, that he is willing to utilize them within their skills as long as it's nothing too dangerous. But he's clearly not someone who is like going to use everything at his disposal, if that makes sense. He's not like avoiding it or denying it. He's just, yeah. No, also valid because they did hint at the naval base because war is on the horizon. Absolutely correct. It does make me curious where Ubar territory is because they mentioned that Whipper Kingdom is across on the other side of the ocean from Ubar, right? So that's how I understand your confusion regarding Whipper Kingdom's location because it is north of Ubar. in the past kids worked and they had to work, parents couldn't just keep them around before being allowed to work. Yes. I think that's the thing. It is his modern sensibilities, but also the fact that I don't think he's planning on having them lounge around and do nothing. It'll just be interesting what the alternative for him, instead of military, how else will he have them be productive? Exactly. He does mention that. He asked him, "Did you ask your siblings about this before you came to talk to me?" He does mention that. So, all these things considered, it'll be super interesting to see how he resolves all these things. And, like, hold on, water. That is also valid, especially because, like was mentioned, the dragon On and Hung, who are very young, I think their average age is 7. They are actively working, right? So how would the other kids who are around their age or a little bit older perceive it when these kids are doing something but they're not doing something, right? That is also very true because we've talked a lot about how other people perceive you based on your actions, right? So not just that, but it's like, yeah, that's just an ongoing thing, isn't it? Because I think even when I was talking about like how Kale is oblivious to how his actions come across to other people, all these things will apply and they will affect how other people perceive things or perceive you and perceive their place around you and perceive, make their own, how they understand their position. That like, all of those kind of things, they all ties together. Honestly, I also think we don't know a lot about how the tribe used to do things as well. I want to bring this up. Right now we're kind of all focusing on like, oh yeah, this is this kind of era, but how does the Blue Wolf tribe take care of their children? Because it says that they are super protective of their young. So are they protective in the sense that they protect the kids until they are old enough to learn how to fight? Because clearly these kids were taken and they were left to the very end because they weren't fighters, right? So these kids aren't trained. They can learn eventually, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not how the Blue Wolf tribe treats their kids affects how Kale ultimately decides to deal with these kids. Because we can't forget, if we're talking about all these perspectives, then what are the kids used to? What is the culture of their tribe? Because their tribe is very close knit and things like that. They didn't get berserk mode yet, so easier to manage. That is true, but that's also because they're not young. They're too young to, right? I think Locke is 13, and he wasn't supposed to berserk this early, but we also don't know the trigger for berserk mode. Is it that, like, the Sharingan, where you see a traumatic event and your berserk mode is triggered? Or is it like an age? Is it like when you hit your growth spurt? What is the trigger for the berserk mode, and how do they differentiate that? That's why there's so many details we don't yet know about them to kind of decide, are these kids in the eyes of the Blue tribe, or were these young adults getting ready to contribute in their tribe, So that will also affect how they want to contribute. Lots of stories ignore the perspective and traditions of the non-human kids the MC always ends up adopting. Yes. And I think one thing that Kale mentions is like he doesn't know a lot about the cat tribe. He doesn't. So he tells them, hey, if this happens, find me. And he tries to teach them what he can, but he doesn't know a lot about the cat tribe. How does the cat tribe raise their kids? And Hong and On mentioned that they were potential heirs before. They had received training. They were trained to be assassins, even though they were so young. And I remember that. So that's why sometimes, like, the fact that the cat tribe starts their kids so young, but the wolf tribe doesn't seem to do that, is also an interesting difference in the tribes, right? And I do appreciate that they are kind of differentiating. Like, even with the dragon, they're like, the dragons definitely don't have berserk mode. A lot of things are instinctual for them. Like, they are kind of differentiating everyone and trying to, like, keep with that. But I do agree with you. Oftentimes, like, when the main character adopts someone, they are just expected to conform to the MC's values. And kind of irrelevant, but I'll do it because I'm okay with it. In that time I reincarnated as a slime, one of my complaints was that the main character was like, don't harm humans. I used to be a human. I don't want to hurt humans. So even when his monsters, his allies, were being hurt, they just endured it and they let people hurt them because they were told not to hurt them because of the main character saying, these are my values. You should take them on. So I think he did get the full brunt of his consequence after that, so I'm not too complaining about it, but this is a really great example of someone like enforcing their own values onto someone else. But yeah, agreed. Always very interesting. Especially, I don't know if anyone else remembers, but Ron, as soon as he was like, oh, these kids are cat tribe, he knows the cat tribe, right? Because Ron is from the Eastern continent. He immediately started training the kids. And the kids are annoyed because they're learning things they already knew. But Ron is just immediately teaching them all his tricks. So we can tell already so many different ways to approach it. The master-servant kind of relationship. Yeah, that's also true. Also true. We can argue that for them. But I also think that the main character was just annoyingly naive. I didn't like that. I do think that story is a good story, but that point really annoyed me because I think even as someone in a modern time, you know some people can be terrible. So for him to be like, oh yeah, just don't hurt anyone and not have the caveat or like the flexibility to be like, as long as you don't hit them first, or like you can protect yourself, or you can, if someone goes out of line, you can remove them from the situation. He didn't have those, so that's why I didn't like that. But yeah, definitely, because a lot of times in isekai stories, the main character is like a leader, so everyone follows what he wants, what he thinks, right? And that sometimes includes values. And it is oftentimes a master servant relationship. But in this case, so far we can see that besides Choi Han kind of like being willing to follow along with Kale, everyone else is seeing him as a leader, but not like a master. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay, I think I'm gonna cut it off here for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I had so much fun. I definitely want to do this again, and I want to do more book club streams, but not frequency. I just meant let's do this once a month. I think this is really fun, and I really enjoy getting to hear your guys' thoughts and perspectives on a lot of these things. I did take quite a few notes for myself on just how I want to run a session next time. I will definitely leave more time after categories, I think, for you guys to bring up things. And I'm gonna try potentially making the stream a little bit earlier just so that we can have a bit more time, because I can kind of tell already that these are gonna run a bit longer than my typical stream. So we're gonna experiment a bit. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you had fun, whether you chatted, lurked, or are watching the VOD. Increased time means more slides. You're right. I can definitely do more than 52. I'll break my record next time. If you guys still have anything you want to discuss, anything that we missed, any characters, you can write it down and we can talk about it next time, or you can also put them in the comment section below. Definitely another way you can do that. Thank you so much for joining me. I had so much fun, as you can tell, and I hope you guys found it equally as fun. As always, remember to drink water, take care of yourselves. I would say stay warm. It's really warmed up where I am, but I hope that wherever you guys are staying warm or cool, depending on your weather. I would love to do a little bit longer, but I really have to cut it off here today just because I do have to prepare myself For Friday, we are going to finish potentially Digimon Survive. Oh, double already. Wow, things have like really crazily warmed up for everyone, hasn't it? Oh my goodness. All right. Well, take care, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope I see you guys in my next stream, which will be Digimon Survive on Friday. Sweet dreams. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you guys in another stream. Until next time.